This lecture is on the urinary system. The primary purpose of the urinary system is to filter wastes from the blood and to excrete them as urine. And the primary waste is urea, which contains nitrogen. Urea is made in the liver from ammonia, a toxic compound which comes from biochemical reactions such as protein breakdown for energy. And urea moves from the liver to the kidneys, where it is excreted. The urinary system also removes all other wastes, such as excess electrolytes, drugs, and water. This picture shows the organs of the urinary system. There are two kidneys which are located posterior to the abdominal cavity. There's the left kidney located behind the stomach. There's the right kidney located behind the liver. A person can live with just one kidney. The kidneys have a rich blood supply because their purpose is to filter the blood. The renal artery is bringing oxygenated blood to each kidney. And the renal artery comes from the abdominal aorta, which is the big blood vessel that is coming from the heart. And so the abdominal aorta branches off into the renal artery, and the renal artery or arteries lead to each kidney. And so the blood coming into each kidney is oxygenated, but also contains waste. And the deoxygenated blood is going to leave the kidneys through the renal vein, but is also going to be cleaned of waste. So it's clean blood, but doesn't contain oxygen. And the deoxygenated blood will then be returned to the heart via the inferior vena cava. The kidney is going to make the urine, and the urine is then going to travel down the ureters, and from the ureters it goes to the urinary bladder, and urine is stored in the urinary bladder, and then it exits through the urethra, which is the tube that is taking urine outside the body. Here's a picture of the kidney. There are three main parts to the kidney. The outer part is called the capsule, which is a fibrous outer layer that covers the cortex. The cortex is the primary outer layer, which takes up about a third of the kidney. And then the medulla is the inner part of the kidney, which consists of several renal pyramids. And the pyramids are where much of the filtration takes place. The urine resulting from filtration in the pyramids is going to drain into the calyx, which is shown here in yellow. And then the calyx drains into the renal pelvis. And the renal pelvis is not labeled here. And then the renal pelvis drains into the ureter. And then the ureter will lead to the urinary bladder. And so the flow of urine is from the pyramids to the calyx, to the renal pelvis, to the ureters, to the bladder. The primary filtration unit of each kidney is called the nephron, and there are over 1 million nephrons in each kidney. And the nephrons are located in the pyramid and also partially in the cortex as well. And so let's look at an individual nephron, an individual filtration device of the kidney. This is the main structure of the kidney tubule, also called the renal tubule. And the kidney tubule contains the Bowman's capsule, into which the urine is first filtered out of the blood. And at that point, it's not yet called urine, it is called filtrate. And the filtrate is going to move from the Bowman's capsule to the proximal tubule, down into the loop of Henle, up into the distal tubule, and out the collecting duct, which is going to lead to the calyx, into the renal pelvis. And so let's just follow this with a pen. So from the Bowman's capsule, the filtrate, which is the first liquid that is removed from the capillaries, or from the blood capillaries, is going to travel from the Bowman's capsule into the proximal tubule, and is going to head from the proximal tubule down into the loop of Henle, and then up from the loop of Henle up into the distal tubule, and then from the distal tubule into the collecting duct. And several nephrons are going to feed into the collecting duct, and the filtrate, now urine, is going to head out into the calyx and into the renal pelvis, which will then lead to the ureters. This is a picture of the same nephron, showing it surrounded by its capillaries. And those capillaries are called peritubular capillaries. The word root peri means near, and they are near the tubule. And blood comes into the tubule through the afferent arteriole. The afferent arteriole brings the blood into the nephron, and then it branches into a bed of capillaries, which is called the glomerulus. And the glomerulus is inside the Bowman's capsule. In this structure, the materials are filtered out of the blood under high pressure, and this is called filtration. Okay, so filtration happens in the glomerulus, which is in the Bowman's capsule. And then the substance formed is called the filtrate. The filtrate does not contain large molecules, large proteins. They can't squeeze through the blood vessels, and it also does not contain cells. The materials then that are remaining in the blood are going to exit the glomerulus at the efferent arteriole. And the efferent arteriole then forms a mesh of capillaries that surrounds the renal tubule. And then the filtrate continues on its path heading towards the proximal tubule. But as it heads through the proximal tubule on the loop of Henle and the distal tubule to the collecting duct, it's going to be modified, and then it's going to form into urine. So the question is, how is the filtrate modified? The urine is modified by processes known as reabsorption and secretion. In filtration, about 180 liters of water per day are filtered out of the glomerulus into the Bowman's capsule. But a person only urinates about 1.5 to 2 liters per day. And so most of what's filtered out is going to be taken back into the blood. This is called reabsorption. And so those materials will go back into the peritubular capillaries. About 75% of what is reabsorbed back into the blood is going to be reabsorbed in the proximal tubule. And then the remaining filtrate is going to continue on down into the loop of Henle. What's going to be reabsorbed in the proximal tubule, in addition to water, are glucose and salts and other dissolved substances like vitamins and minerals. And then later on in the distal tubule is when the process of secretion will take place. In secretion, substances are moved from the bloodstream back into the renal tubule for excretion. Filtrate is going to move from the distal tubule into the collecting duct, and into the collecting duct, in the collecting duct, certain things do happen in that some water may be retained in the bloodstream, so taken back into the bloodstream, and for the purposes of raising blood pressure or to maintain hydration. But let's talk about the loop of Henle, something that we skipped over. The loop of Henle is a little bit like the collecting duct in that its purpose is to bring water back into the bloodstream. And so what happens is in the ascending limb, which is going up, the ascending limb of the loop of Henle, sodium is secreted out of the tubule into the capillaries, and because sodium is secreted out, water from the descending limb goes out. And so the longer the loops of Henle are, the more water the animal is able to conserve. So for example, desert animals and birds have been found to have very long loops of Henle. And so desert animals need to conserve their water because of drought conditions, and birds need to conserve their water for long distance flight. And so it is in those areas, the longer the loop of Henle, the more water will be taken back into the bloodstream. And then finally, urine will exit the kidneys through the ureters and go down into the urinary bladder, where it is stored. And the urinary bladder has stretch receptors that are activated when sufficient urine has built up in the bladder. And those receptors will then signal the brain, which will signal muscles that allow us to relax those muscles, and then urination will take place and urine will exit through the urethra. And about 2,500 milliliters of water are lost from the body per day. 1.5 to 2 liters are going to come out in the urine, and about 500 ml of water is lost from evaporation through sweat and also through other metabolic processes. And that ends our lecture on the urinary system. Thank you for listening.